This is a population presentation over the Counseling of American Indians and Native Americans by Laura Buckheit. Current statistical information taken from the United States Census says that about 3.8 million American Indians and Alaskan Natives are living in the United States, which comprises about 1.2% of the total U.S. population. For the federal government to consider a person an American Indian, they must have an Indian blood quantum of 25%. Tribes, however, have been setting their own criteria. About 34% of American Indians live on reservations, and 57% are living in metropolitan areas. They have the highest national poverty rate at 27%, and their any-cause death rate is about 50% higher than for whites. American Indians suffer from mental health issues, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and alcoholism at a disproportionate 2 to 2.5 times higher than the general population. Suicide rates for ages 15 to 34 are at an epidemic proportion, which is about 250% higher than the general population. This is associated with alcohol abuse, poverty, boredom, family breakdown, and a disconnect with their culture. Characteristics of American Indians include the tribal social structure and the family structure. In the tribal social structure, there is a tribe, a tribal council that holds tribal court on reservations. The family structure includes a very large extended family and a high value on their extended family. In traditional belief systems, there's a seen world and an unseen world. And cultural and spiritual values include sharing, cooperation, non-interference, time orientation, spirituality, nonverbal communication, and they see mental health issues as due to unbalanced spiritual relationships. Some protective factors or strengths of Native Americans include endurance, spirituality and tradition, extended family networks, wisdom of tribe elders, respect for the environment, a deep connection to land, adaptability. They value themes of belonging, mastery of skill, independence, and generosity. Protective factors include listening and observing rather than reacting, which enhances communication and decreases conflict. They focus on the present and mindfulness. The original inhabitants of Missouri, if you look at the map, we are in the area of Chickasaw, Quapaw, and Illini, close to Osage also. Missouri is a Sioux Indian word that comes from the tribal name Missouria and means big canoe people. Currently, there are no federally recognized tribes in Missouri. This is due to the forced removal of tribes in the 1800s when they were pushed from North Georgia through Missouri and into Oklahoma. A historical background of the Trail of Tears. The Trail of Tears was caused by the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This initiative was passed by President Andrew Jackson. This is when over 20,000 Native Americans were forced out of their ancestral lands from North Georgia. The vast majority of these Native Americans were from the Cherokee Nation. In Jackson, Missouri, a little city near Cape Girardeau, it is named for President Andrew Jackson. It was renamed in 1819. There's a link to Amazon where there are many reference books that give information on the Trail of Tears in Missouri. Here is a link for Missouri State Parks. The Trail of Tears State Park is a memorial that is located just 13 miles from the SEMO University campus along the Mississippi River. You can go to the link, click on photos, and view the land along the Mississippi River that once belonged to these tribes. Challenges in perception of the majority culture. Over 200 years of oppression. So beginning in the 1800s with the forced removal, there were socio-political issues, loss of land, loss of resources, and loss of life. The attempts to civilize the savages, civilize barbarians, colonize and assimilate, enslave, capture, torture, and murder of tribes. The destruction of Indian languages, their barbarous dialect should be blotted out and English language should be substituted, is what has been quoted by the federal commissioners of that time. The Child Welfare Act of 1978 and the Indian Child Welfare Act dealt with Indian children being removed from their homes and being forced to live with non-Indian families as a federal mandate. They had to spend 8 years away from their families. This would cause a sever in the traditional ways and languages, which is exactly what the federal government wanted to see happen. By the time they're returned to their families, they have lost their language and they've lost their traditions and customs. And as late as 2014, the National Indian Welfare Association was still receiving concerns and cause for investigation into Indian children still being removed from their homes without just cause. Included in that oppression over the past 200 years have been many broken treaties, much seizure and misuse of Indian land, much unresolved grief, historical trauma, soul wounds. American Indians are often suspicious of the majority culture and their motives in general. Currently, there is a series called Longmire on Netflix. It is a 7-season series, and it brings awareness to current American Indian reservation issues. Many American Indian actors are employed on this series, and the setting is in Wyoming, in and on and around reservations. Tribal courts uphold current reservation laws. The cessation of tribal lands in the United States can be seen, viewed on these time-lapsed maps. The first 2 links on YouTube. The first one is 17 seconds. It's a demonstration of the cessation of Indian lands. And the second one is about a minute and 49 seconds, and it is a cessation of individual tribal lands. The last link is almost 20 minutes long. If you wouldn't mind, please viewing the first 5 minutes. It is a TED Talks video. It is an American Indian woman who is showing current photos of American Indians in a positive image. The entire video is something good to watch if you had that interest. So some concerns that surface in counseling with American Indians. There's a cycle of poverty. There's a reduced amount of opportunities. There's a cycle of violence and domestic violence against women and children. There are concerns with alcoholism, which has its origin in sharing and togetherness, but has also come to be related to low self-esteem and feelings of powerlessness. There is a cycle of substance abuse and addictions. In counseling, you will see identity conflicts, effects of childhood maltreatment, and the lack of positive role models. There's a high suicide rate, and a research scientist on the APA blog named Melanie Peterson-Hickey said that trauma resulting from a history of race-based policy, discrimination, and oppression has a significant and long-standing impact on American Indian population. Conflict over exposure to 2 very different cultures, ethnic identity issues, family relationship issues, grades, concern for the future, and a high rate of girls reporting that they do not want to live. The perception of schools is poor as it's seen as a potentially hostile environment. The lack of adaptation of curriculum and standardized testing does not support the diverse background of American Indians. And American Indians will often be suspicious of having their children taken away or removed due to those issues from the 1970s to present day of Indian children being removed from their homes. Stereotyping will include using words such as savages, Wild West images, pagan, Injun, brave, buck, chief, redskin, squaw, papoose, poor, drunk, invisible race, wild, dirty, pesky, sneaky, adding to words in humor, associated with tobacco, cigar store Indians, scalping, warpath, 10 Little Indians Until There Were None, preschool song. The use of associated words to sell items, the marketing of racist objects based on Indian culture, words and symbols as mascots for schools and teams, and the red face perception. Language is a control mechanism. Words are weapons that show who is inferior and who is superior in these instances of stereotyping. If you think of the words man, woman, and baby, they bring a very different image than buck, squaw, and papoose. Cultural norms for American Indians. In tribes and extended families, they are responsible for educating children. They have entered into treaties, which are usually broken, and they run the tribal courts, which is based on their law system. Indigenous healing and shamans. These norms and traditions would include the sweat lodge ceremony, meditation, the use of peyote in a vision quest, connection and harmony with the universe, and something that is very good to use in counseling is the talking circles. It's based on their cultural norms. So some conflicting ideals between the Western society and American Indian traditions. So in Western healing, we think of reality consisting of distinctly separate objects. We don't think that anything is connected. And what they reference is, American Indians will reference is Mother Earth and the cosmos. What Westerners believe is that truth is observed through 5 senses, that space and time are fixed and absolute, that science operates from the universal principles and are culture-free. The pursuit of happiness with Western ideals most often is conceived to be manifested that material wealth and physical well-being is sometimes even seen as a divine approval for a lifestyle. In other cultures, they may more highly value spirituality and intellectual goals. And American Indians may place a high value on the right life being one of interdependence and spirituality as what is healthy, and their prayers may include a deep connection with their ancestors. Some do's in multicultural counseling with American Indians. This is taken from a transcript that I was able to read on ResearchGate from the project director, John Carlson, and a counselor who is an American Indian, Winona Sims, as she counseled an American Indian woman. So ResearchGate has a registration process if you would like to become part of that. Winona Sims says that you must have a willingness to hear the story, and you must be able to see the client's world first. That you must have a willingness to participate in unconventional experiences, using person-centered and a personal narrative building approach is best. Use active listening, validation and feedback, retelling of stories to show that you are listening and to build rapport at a slower pace. Allow the story to be told and deemed as valuable. Self-disclosure with an American Indian client is seen as gift exchange, and it is used to model revealing information. Multicultural counseling with American Indians, more dues. These come from the Journal of Indigenous Research. They recommend to build relationships within Native communities. If you're nearby, if you're going to be counseling in a school that is nearby a reservation or in a community that has a reservation, you would want to build some type of relationship with those tribal communities. Work to reduce obstacles to receive care. Welcome clients warmly and offer refreshments. Use a minimal intake of paperwork. Use self-disclosure. Understand mistrust, their stigma and fear that they face. There are recommended books and videos at the bottom of this slide for more information. More dues from Sue and Sue, our textbook. Do identify and acknowledge any current protective factors. Do research which tribe, if any, your client is a member of or identifies with. Do acknowledge the value of age-old wisdom. Do consider if traditional healing practices are abusive. They are not considered abusive if medical literature reveals no physical complications, if there is an intent to heal, not to harm, if they are being used in conjunction with Western medicine. There has been success shown with cognitive behavior therapy with American Indians. Do familiarize yourself with the DSM-4 and 5, the cultural syndromes and idioms of distress, which are listed. Examples include amok and ghost sickness. Do allow a client's level of acculturation to guide your therapeutic interventions. Do realize that the bicultural orientation may be the healthiest. Do incorporate cultural strengths, protective factors, evidence-based strategies, and traditional tribal practices, such as talking circles. Some don'ts in counseling. Don't over-pathologize. What may be pathological in Western diagnostic views may not be pathological in tribal views. Don't rush the relationship. Don't assume all tribes and their healing practices are alike. Don't force Western healing or pursuits of happiness. Don't stereotype the client. One specific suicide intervention program that was used at Zuni Tribal High School in 1995 with a student population that had 81% of their students identified as having moderate to severe risk of suicide probability. They used role-playing, self-esteem building, emotion identification, stressor ID, recognizing and eliminating negative thoughts, suicide education, and personal and community goal setting. And it reduced the overall probability for that population of completing suicide. From our book, Sue and Sue, the experience of the American Indian Native American people is not comparable to that of any other ethnic group. A list of references. Thank you.